Okay, for the next few weeks we're going to be reading representative works of Japanese literary modernism. Japanese modernism is often described in the context of modernism, which is a katakana word that was coined in the 1920s by journalists, and it's usually applied in a limited sense to refer to Shinkankakuha writers who are associated with the journal Bunge, Shunju, and a very small group of writers who were sort of self-avowedly modernist, who mimicked the styles and the forms of European modernists and so forth. However, Japanese modernism is much broader than that, and its roots are much deeper than that, and they began in the Meiji period. In 1905, I think you can trace its roots to that date, when Ueda Bin published his collection of translations of French and European symbolist poems, and he titled the collection Kaichō-on. That came out in 1905, and that introduced French symbolism and European symbolism to Japan, and it spread from there. So the influence on that whole generation of writers who were active in the late Meiji period is enormous, and it became the sort of root for Japanese modernism. So even writers that are not included in that group, of that small group of modernism writers, are influenced by symbolism and therefore have traces of modernism in their work. So Kawabata Yasunari, for example, is very much a writer working in the modernist mode. Tanizaki too, who's not usually associated with modernism, is very much influenced by symbolism. Basically any writer who's trying to do something other than the mainstream. And the mainstream in Japan after, I would say, the 1890s, early 1900s, is Shizen Shugi. So you can think of Japanese modern literary history as divided into these two groups. And so there's some overlap, of course, but in general there are the two groups of Shizen Shugi, or naturalism, who basically have a very simplistic attitude toward language, that believe in the idea that reality as such can be conveyed in simple language without the intercession of symbols and metaphors and allusivity and so forth. And then on the other hand, those who are trying to do something else, and those who are very influenced by symbolism, which is the inaugurating phase of modernism both in Europe and in Japan. Okay, so the writers we'll be reading for the next few weeks are coming out of this other strand, this sort of oppositional strand that is opposed to naturalism, the anti-naturalist group, or the modernist group, or the symbolist group. Okay, so in order to give you an idea of what symbolism is, I thought we'd go to the beginning of symbolism. And the first two great poets of symbolism are Charles Baudelaire and Stéphane Mallarmé. So I thought we would read Stéphane Mallarmé's very famous poem, which he wrote in 1865, I think, and it was published in 1867, called L'après-midi d'un faune. And I'll be reading an English translation of this. The translation is by Klein, I think is his or her name, A.H. Klein. I'll be reading that to introduce you, give you an idea of what symbolism is. Keep in mind that this is 4 decades before, 40 years before Ueda Bin formally introduced symbolism to Japan with his collection Kaichō-on, the sound of the tide, is the translation of that. And I think this poem might be included in that collection. I'll have to check. But here is Stéphane Mallarmé's L'après-midi d'un faune. And just one more thing to note, that keep in mind that the influence of symbolist poetry on Japan goes far beyond the world of poetry. So that many of the novelists and prose writers, fiction writers of the late Meiji and early Taisho and early Showa periods were influenced by symbolist poetry, and they show symbolist influence in they appropriated symbolist elements and techniques into their fiction writing. L'après-midi d'un faune, éclogue, the faun. These nymphs I would perpetuate them, so bright, their crimson flesh that hovers there, light in the air, drowsy with dense slumbers. Did I love a dream? My doubt, mass of ancient night, ends extreme in many a subtle branch, that remaining the true woods themselves proves, alas, that I too offered myself alone as triumph the false ideal of roses. Let's see. Or if those women you note reflect your fabulous senses' desire, Faun, illusion escapes from the blue eye, cold, like a fount of tears of the most chaste. But the other, she, all sighs, contrasts, you say, like a breeze of day warm on your fleece? No, through the swoon, heavy and motionless, stifling with heat the cool morning's struggles, no water, but that which my flute pours, murmurs to the grove sprinkled with melodies, and the soul breathes out of the twin pipes, quick to breathe, before it scatters the sound in an arid rain, is unstirred by any wrinkle of the horizon, the visible breath, artificial and serene, of inspiration returning to heights unseen. O Sicilian shores of a marshy calm, my vanity plunders vying with the sun, silent beneath scintillating flowers, relate that I was cutting hollow reeds here tamed by talent, when on the green gold of distant verdure, offering its vine to the fountains, an animal whiteness undulates to rest. And as a slow prelude in which the pipes exist, this flight of swans, no, of naiads, cower or plunge. Inert, all things burn in the tawny hour, not seen by what art there fled away together, too much of hymen desired by one who seeks there the natural A. Then I'll wake to the primal fever, erect, alone, beneath the ancient flood, light's power, lily, and the one among you all for artlessness. Other than this sweet nothing shown by their lip, the kiss that softly gives assurance of treachery, my breast, virgin of proof, reveals the mystery of the bite from some illustrious tooth planted. Let that go. Such the arcane chose for confidant, the great twin reed we play under the azure ceiling, that turning towards itself, the cheeks quivering, dreams in a long solo, so we might amuse the beauties round about by false notes that confuse between itself and our credulous singing, and create as far as love can, modulating, the vanishing, from the common dream of pure flank, or back followed by my shuttered glances, of a sonorous, empty, and monotonous line. Try then, instrument of flight, O malign syrinx by the lake where you await me, to flower again. I, proud of my murmur, intend to speak at length of goddesses, and with idolatrous paintings remove again from shadow their waists' bindings, so that when I've sucked the grape's brightness to banish a regret done away with by my pretense, laughing, I raise the emptied stem to the summer's sky, and breathing into those luminous skins, then I, desiring drunkenness, gaze through them till evening. O nymphs, let's rise again with many memories. My eye, piercing the reeds, speared each immortal neck that drowns its burning in the water with a cry of rage towards the forest sky, and the splendid bath of hair slipped by in brightness and shuddering. O jewels! I rush there, when at my feet entwine, bruised by the languor, tested in their being two's evil, girls sleeping in each other's arms, sole peril, I seize them without untangling them, and run to this bank of roses wasting in the sun, all perfume, hated by the frivolous shade, where our frolic should be like a vanished day. I adore you, wrath of virgins. O shy delight of the nude sacred burden that glides away to flee my fiery lip, drinking the secret terrors of the flesh like quivering lightning, from the feet of the heartless one to the heart of the timid, in a moment abandoned by innocence, wet with wild tears or less sad vapours. Happy at conquering these treacherous fears, my crimes to have parted the dishevelled tangle of kisses that the gods kept so well mingled, for I'd scarcely begun to hide an ardent laugh in one girl's happy depths, holding back with only a finger, so that her feathery candour might be tinted by the passion of her burning sister, the little one, naive and not even blushing. Then from my arms, undone by vague dying, this prey, forever ungrateful, frees itself and is gone, not pitying the sob with which I was still drunk. No matter, others will lead me towards happiness by the horns on my brow knotted with many a tress. You know my passion, how ripe and purple already every pomegranate bursts, murmuring with the bees. And our blood, enamoured of what will seize it, flows for all the eternal swarm of desire yet. And the hour when this wood with gold and ashes heaves a feast excited among the extinguished leaves. Etna, it's on your slopes, visited by Venus, setting in your lava her heels so artless, when a sad slumber thunders where the flame burns low. I hold the queen, O certain punishment. No, but the soul void of words, and this heavy body, succumb to noon's proud silence slowly. With no more ado, forgetting blasphemy, I must sleep, lying on the thirsty sand, and as I love, open my mouth to wine's true constellation. Farewell to you both. I go to see the shadow you have become. And I should note as a last word here that on the handout that you will have distributed to you through Google Classroom, you will have the English translation along with the original French, along with a Japanese translation as well, with notes at the bottom. So read all of those carefully, and I will perhaps make a study guide that asks questions that delve more deeply into this work at some point and load that later. But for this recitation video is all I have for now. That is all. Goodbye. If you have any questions, send me an email.